Thank you to all of you attending tonight. My name is Tatiana Deravidisyan. I'm Chair of Trustees of the Armenian Institute, and we are really pleased to have you here. We're hosting an event with Sarhat Petrosyan, and we're very excited to have him here with us today. My colleague and fellow trustee, Aram Muradyan, is going to be hosting this evening with Sarhat. We thought it was only fair given the fact that the two of them know each other. The Armenian Institute is the leading arts and cultural organization in the UK. We make Armenian history and culture a living experience, and we host lots of lectures, talks, musical experiences, concerts, theatre productions, and so on, to help amplify the Armenian story to a UK audience. Thank you very much for attending this evening, and I will hand off to Aram to...
Thank you very much, Tatiana. I don't have... I won't talk for too long because obviously Sarhat needs to give his talk, and I think that's why we're all here. But I just wanted to give a very brief introduction. It was actually on my first day ever in Armenia that I was given a copy of his book. I don't think he realizes that. And it's a really magnificent and evocative selection of essays and photographs, I think. And a few years later, I met one of the contributors to that book, Zhenya Guvkina, who I'm very pleased to see here tonight. And we were both describing the same book, and there was a moment where I realized, it's this one, and I grabbed it off the shelf, and I couldn't believe it. Then again, a few years later, I was privileged enough to take some of my students that I was working in Armenia with to Armenia, and Sarhat very graciously offered to give them a tour of Yerevan, and it was such an extraordinary walk through the city that really exposed his deep and profound knowledge about Armenia and Armenian architecture, his activism, his passion for history and for the future of architecture in Armenia. So I think he's a magnificent scholar, and we're very happy to have him in London. So welcome, Sarhat Petrosyan. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. So for me, it's not easy to speak in this kind of setting. But anyways, it's my pleasure to be here. So when I was here 6 months ago and my colleague Maria Gunko was doing the presentation, the idea came up, why not I share a bit of my research that I've been doing last 15, 20 years. So the idea was to present whatever we did during the last, this period of time. For that reason, we decided to have this broad topic or title of Untold, about urban Armenia, talking about urbanization of Armenia. But when I started to just make the list of those urban projects that I would like to share with you, it was, and then a few days ago, I received an email that I have 45 minutes. I decided to eliminate some of them, especially Yerevan, because we write a lot about Yerevan, and Yerevan is kind of unique case. But also this year, I had to talk about Yerevan already twice, because this year we are going to celebrate 100th anniversary of Yerevan's master plan approved in 1924. So I want to apologize that I will speak about Armenian urbanism or urbanity without talking about Yerevan. I think this is also an interesting challenge. So as you can see, I took out some kind of towns from this list, but I think through this, whatever remains, I think 5 that remains at the end will help us understand also a bit of the context. Also, I was interested to talk about those ones, about those cities where I did research, except only in other cases I did some projects. But of course, everybody is expecting that I talk about Metsamor. But at this time, I wanted to give a bit bigger picture. And of course, I had to start from Ani. But then it came to my mind that also I can talk about Shushi. And this is what my topic of dissertation. And then because of the situation with Artsakh and Shushi, it changed a lot the structure of the presentation, and this is the first time that I talk about sushi. I did my research back in 2000s, so I defended my dissertation in 2006, so it means like more than 20 years ago. I did this research, and then we were really involved in Yerevan and other cities. We forgot about sushi, about Artsakh, and this is one of the first times that I went back. I started opening up all this research, presentations, topics that I have. So this is also for me quite like important day that I'm opening up again the topic of the sushi for myself. So of course, Ani is the main kind of so far one of the most important like urban projects that Armenians had during last few thousand years that we were around. And the importance, when we talk about Ani, we always talk about the architecture, about the city with 1,100 churches, etc. But in general, when we talk about Armenian architecture, Armenian history, we all know that there was a lot of attention to the Middle Ages of Armenian architecture because of the Soviet propaganda. There was less attention to the recent kind of period of Armenian history, Armenian architecture. During last years, we started to talk about the Soviet Modernism because there's this hype topic, Soviet Modernism hype topic all around the world, and then also the book Metsamor that I'm going to share with you also was part of that hype kind of process. But there wasn't enough attention, research about Armenian cities and Ani in particular. So you can find so many publications about different churches, different structures in Ani, from decorative elements, from the structural elements, but there is quite like very few proper research that anyone's tried to go deep to understand how the urbanization of Ani happened. So just giving you a bit of context, Ani was capital of Armenia in 10th, 11th century. At that time, Ani's population was 100,000. Just for comparison, at that time, London was about 40,000. Constantinopolis was 500,000. So Ani was one of the like megapolises of that time, and also capital of Armenian Kingdom. But interesting part of the Ani and the map that you see, this is the map of Ani published by RAA, Research of Armenian Architecture. You can see a bit the structure of the town, but when you go there, you don't feel the structure because like it was never kind of properly researched, excavated. But the important part of the Ani is that when you research the whatever is we have about urbanity in Ani, so something about like 1/3 of population lived in underground Ani, because Ani, as you can see from the topography, is on this rectangular kind of like peninsula shape. And so because the city grew, so people started occupying underground part of the Ani. Now, when you visit there, no one, the police doesn't let anyone go in underground part of the Ani because it's really close to the border. But those rare cases that anyone went there, so you can find magnificent kind of buildings, as you can see, like entirely carved kind of structures underground, and we are talking about the settlement kind of that housed about 20 to 30,000 people lived underground. But this is really sad story that no one ever had chance to go and study. When the first studies in Ani happened in the late 19th century, early 20th century by Smar and then Tamanian and Toramanian did different studies. They always researched the architecture, the religious structures, very few civic structures, and there wasn't enough and proper attention to the underground urbanization of Ani, which I think is really important thing. And some pictures that you can find available online or in different publications shows that this is something that we need to really go and study. So is the only city that I didn't have a chance to really do research, but I can't talk about the Armenian urbanity or urbanization of Armenia without talking about Ani. But these magnificent structures that goes all beyond the gorge between Asturian Gorge, which is between Armenia and Turkey, is really valuable, and I think it's something that we need to do. After that, I think comes Shushi. Shushi is used to be the capital or the main administrative center of Artsakh Melikutun, or small kind of administrative subdivision that happened to be in part where Artsakh was located. So history of the Shushi is really interesting, and it's really important because usually when Tatars moved in Artsakh in 11th, 12th centuries, they mainly occupied the flat part of Artsakh, and Armenians lived in the mountainous areas of Artsakh. And Shushi was the main kind of administrative center of Artsakh. In early 19th century, there was this pact between Armenian feudal Melik and Tatar or Muslim feudal or Khan, Pana Khan. There was a deal that Melik sold the right of the Khan to have a right to build his palace in Shushi. So on the right side, you see the palace of the Khan, which is and the upper part of the Armenian feudal Melik Shahnazar. So this was the time when for the first time Tatar population got right to live in the upper or mountainous part of Artsakh. So that guided to the situation that till recently Shushi was a capital of administrative capital of Artsakh, but it always had some amount of the Muslim or, as we call now, Azeri population in this part. And this is unique case that entire town had like two-parted structure, all the history of the Shushi. And we have, in example, international examples in different cities, that how the different kind of religious communities co-lived in the same kind of urban environment. But the history of the Shushi is interesting. Even looking to the map of, if we go back to the original map, you can see in the right side where we can consider that part the Muslim or as Azerbaijani districts, the pattern is a bit like more minor kind of buildings, more narrow streets, and in Armenian part you can see more kind of wider streets, more green spaces between the buildings. And the interesting part is that the city continued to grow numbered, and the right side you can see the main mosque that was the main center of the Muslim quarter of the Shushi, and even the town was called like this. So it was Armenian upper part and Muslim lower part of the Shushi. And these are the maps that at that time I was one of the first Armenians who started doing research in Shushi as an architect. But there were so many publications done by others trying to kind of valorize Azeri heritage of the Shushi. So I will go really quick to show some kind of old pictures of Shushi, and also trying to show how the Azeri and Armenian coexistence kind of happened to be in the Shushi. So this is one of the nicest pictures of the Shushi, dated mid or late 19th century, when you can see the first, the three Armenian churches. In the front one is Ghazan Chetot, which is a symbol of the Shushi, and that for us is quite important structure. On the left corner, you can see Kanat Jam, who will come back to that. And the right side is Aguletsot Church. And in the front, you see the theater of the Shushi. The Shushi was the largest urban settlement after Tiflis till the time when the Baku became the main kind of oil in the center for the oil industry. So in late 19th century, the population of the Shushi reached about 50-60,000 people, which is like Tbilisi. Tiflis was about like a bit more than that, but Shushi was the second largest town of Caucasus till the moment when in early 19th century, early 20th century, Baku became the second largest town when the oil was found there, and during the just after the Industrial Revolution, a lot of Armenians from Artsakh, also from Shushi, moved to Baku and also became really powerful and kind of, as we call the sometime, built Baku. Another picture for one of the main squares in the middle, you can see the Russian church that was demolished later on. On the back, you see some structures that mainly they were administrative buildings. Where the currently Shushi's jail or former fortress is located, that was the part that always the Russian military base was standing there and was kind of controlling the city. And next to it, as a part of it, it was Armenian Russian church in the one of the central squares of the. Another public space, a central square, this time just on the edge of the upper and lower or Armenian or Azeri kind of districts, and this is where the two kind of like districts intersect. The main square in the middle, there is a scale, and where there was dispute in the town, this scale was the one that was kind of out of discussion. Some other pictures on the back, you see Armenian church, and this is another view. On the front, you see the first non-religious school of Artsakh, Realakan School, which is till now standing, built in early 20th century. So just going fast through the Armenian heritage that is there, and we hope that they will be for some time there. So this is Ghazancheto's main cathedral. So it's Amenaperkich or Holy Savior Cathedral. So the churches, Armenian churches in Shushi, they called the name of the district. So they have this official kind of religious names, but Ghazanchetos means was the church of the district that was called Ghazanchetos, and these are the people who came to Shushi from Ghazanchik village. So each of the churches out of the 4 out of the 5, they all have the name of the district, and mainly the name of districts are named from the villages that the people living in that district came from. Ghazanchetos, as you know, the main cathedral, it was standing, symbol of the liberation of the Shushi, and now on the right side, you see the recent picture that now it goes under the restoration, quite disputable, but so far it's standing. The other one is also Povanes or St. John Baptist Church. Everybody knows this church as a Kanatjam. So this church is built in quite early in 19th century. There was a wooden church, and then they changed it to another structure. And this is the recent kind of satellite imagery from Caucasus Heritage Watch, which is working at the Cornell University. It was demolished by April 24. It was like gone. It's not there. So after the Azeri occupation, entire structure is gone, and it's not there. The other one is Kusanatsvank. Kusanatsvank is like Virgin's Monastery, which was in upper part of Armenian district, which was one of the main developments that happened after the Armenian genocide. There were always clashes between Armenians and Azeris in Artsakh, in other parts of the current Armenia. In 1905, 1906, there was like really strong clashes between Azeri and Armenian population of Artsakh, and that was the time when the majority of Armenians left Shushi. So if by, let's say, end of the 19th century, always like majority of the population, 60-70% of the population of Shushi were Armenians and the rest were Muslims, not considering the ethnic kind of ethnicity, like we consider them Muslims at that time, because it's not clear There were Tatars, there were Shia, Persians, because so it was kind of like mixed population. But at that time, from 1906, Armenian population dramatically went down, and during the Soviet time, it was like 5 or 10% of population of Shushi were Armenians. The main were like Azeris. So for that reason, the other churches, 3 churches that we'll see, they all were in the central part of the Armenian district, and they were demolished after that. So Kusanat is one of them. The other one is Aguleto Church, which was a quite big cathedral in Aguleto's district. And district is named to those Armenians who moved from Agulis of Nakhichevan to Shushi. And Meghretzot was another church of the respective districts, people from Mehri. On the left side, left lower side, you see the old kind of structure, which is kind of like basilic kind of structure. On the left up, you see the picture just after during the Soviet time. On the right side is the picture that I took after liberation of the Artsakh, I assume most probably in 2000. And the next one, if it goes to next one, yeah, this is the current situation. It's gone, it's demolished. So during the Soviet time, it was partly preserved and was used as a stage for the pioneer camp, but now it's entirely gone, and it was demolished last 3 years. So Caucasus Heritage Watch initiative, which is, as I said, it's Cornell University-based initiative, and when they do some kind of research or kind of trying to map the destructions of the Armenian heritage in Artsakh, but when they are doing some projects or some research in Shushi, I'm kind of trying to contribute to this process. And all these like findings that we did together, trying to compare the existing and old maps, and also like trying to have parallels with the current satellite imagery. So this is the Greco-Russian church, as I showed you in the central square. During the Soviet time, it was cultural center. Now it's entirely demolished. This is the main mosque, upper mosque of Shushi. It was there during the Soviet years. It was a city museum there. It was entirely restored, quite high quality, initiated by Ruben Vartanyan, who is now in jail in Baku. And now it's, of course, under Azeri control, but it was restored like really high quality, the best quality that we could do at that time. Now it's preserved and it stands there. 2 other mosques that also preserved from that time. They survived Soviet period, and they survived also. They are standing now. So doing my research also, we got a grant, and in 2003 and 4, I think, we measured about 220 historical buildings in Shushi. The majority of historical structures that were standing at that time, they were mainly from the lower, or let's call the Muslim district of the Shushi. And even in my dissertation, always I was trying to, and I think I did, I was kind of objective, representing entire Muslim heritage that was available in Shushi. And these, you see, some of them are the measurements that I did with my students. And then, as I said, in 1905, 1906, the clashes between Armenian and Muslim populations are happening. And then these are the pictures of after that what's happening. The entire upper part of the Shushi was demolished with some unique kind of like large buildings. One of them was Kazancheto's managed to survive these clashes between Armenians and Azeris. So Armenians left population, and during the time, there wasn't proper care, there wasn't any restoration there, so entire district was kind of being kind of evaporated slowly, kind of being kind of, how to say, people were stealing stones, and this is the situation, I think. This is 1960s photos. So this is the picture that you can see. So the left side is early 19 or late 18th century situation, and then the city grows, and this is the best time, let's say, end of the 19th century, early 20th century, and the yellow part on the right side was Armenian district that that was entirely demolished in the early years of the Soviet rule. Larger picture of that, and you can see just only 2 churches kind of remain on the blue kind of survived part. And then this is a bit later map of 1950s, and in the red part I marked those parts that in Russian it's Russian military map, and those ones that you can see they are marked with red, there means that they are kind of like demolished structures. So entirely shows that nothing remains, no any structures in the upper part of Shushi in that period of time. So here you can see the same kind of view in different periods. So this is mainly, I assume, in 1920s, 1930s, 40s, less structures, 1940s, 50s, only the Ganachiam, you see that it's ending. And then during the 60s, there was this kind of like modernization of the Shushi, and instead of Armenian districts, they started building the socialistic blocks, and mainly they covered main Armenian churches that were visible in the city. So these are on the red, on the orange, you can see all the like social housing projects that happened to build during the 60s, 70s in Shushi. That was more or less the same time when Father Aliyev, Heydar Aliyev, was kind of on the peak of his like influence in Azerbaijan. And also, like another thing was like on the left side, you can see a building located in Armenian, or on the edge of Armenian and Azeri district. How during the Soviet time, people kind of Azerbaijanized kind of some elements. So on the left side, you see the typical kind of Armenian local architecture. I'm trying to avoid vernacular wording here, but Armenian kind of local architecture. On the right side, you see how the kind of through the balconies, through other like decoration elements, they tried to make the structures more local under Azerbaijani understanding. So this is another panorama of the Shushi at that time. And then during our research, we also did measured all the water springs. There were like 20 of them, different parts of the Shushi that were water brought to Shushi by Armenians, and this was network of the springs that was providing water to the Shushi. And then, as I said, we restored majority of the big structures in different parts of the city. This is like Karvansaray in on the edge of the Armenian and Muslim district, another structure again in that part. Also, this is just one of the illustrations of my dissertations that I was comparing the existing kind of existing squares of the city that we inherited at that time, also comparing with the previous measurements that was available in different literature. And on those ones that you can see on the left side, they are from like Azerbaijani researchers, and my parallels was kind of understanding how the public spaces changed, but it was really hard to find any kind of research on the previous situation of Armenian public spaces or an Armenian part of the city. And this is one of the last photos you can see here. It's this is Realakan school that I showed you. This is Jamharian hospital, and you see all these red ones are new developments that were built during the last 2 years after Azeri occupation of the Shushi, when it was like entirely under their control. This was where the Mehretor church was located, and now these kinds of developments are happening. Around 2 weeks ago, I was in Vilnius, and I was in a conference. I met Azerbaijani activist who was kind of like opening up the corruption cases for against Aliyev regime. So it's really like funny situation. So when you are talking to the Azerbaijani activists, they are like always they're criticizing Aliyev, like everything to corruption, whatever is happening in their country. Till the moment when you talked about Artsakh, you have to stop, because anyways they are ready kind of to change their side and trying to how they say support whatever Aliyev is doing in Artsakh. But anyways, here, so this development is happening in Shushi, for example. There is no any interest for anyone to go and live there, but they are forcing the corrupt state officials to buy properties in Shushi, and this is a development that is happening in Armenian district next to the historical structure we have in that. And some another kind of cases that we found. This is Armenian cemetery. This is Razan Church, you can see. So here there was Armenian historic cemetery. And this is the current photo that they are kind of excavating, and they are going to build mosque someday where Armenian cemetery was. So yeah, so here I would stop Shushi, and I suggest that we go to Gyumri. Gyumri is quite unique because there is always this intention that Gyumri was more kind of developed city even before Yerevan. You know, Gyumri is located in quite close to the Turkish and Georgian border, and Gyumri was linked to the Russian Empire's rail system earlier than Yerevan. For that reason, it was more developed, and there was easier for Russian Empire kind of military kind of Russia empire to build kind of military base in that area. For that reason, Gyumri was more developed, being considered more developed, and the name was Alexanderpol at that time, close to the left side. You see Ahurian River, which is now currently is the border between Armenia and Turkey. So what's interesting in Gyumri? Gyumri was, as I said, it started developing a bit earlier than Yerevan, and it has quite structured kind of pattern. And the history of or historic buildings of 19th century of the Gyumri are well preserved comparing with the Yerevan, and Gyumri people are really proud of the heritage that they have there. And also there's this common understanding that Gyumri had longer urban history comparing with other cities, especially with Yerevan. There was always competition between Yerevan and Gyumri. But as you know, the earthquake, before earthquake, there's another interesting thing. So when Alexander Tamanyan developed the master plan of Yerevan, so this Armenian modernist architect who designed fabulous, iconic modernistic buildings, they also try to involve themselves in urban planning. And this is one of the examples of that master plan of Gyumri developed by one of the modernist architects, Mikhail Mazmanyan. As you can see, is quite conservative in that sense, trying to kind of repeating what Tamanyan did in Yerevan. But the master plan of Gyumri was developed by modernist architects, and they did also several other examples. So Gyumri was developed in its own way, a bit different from Yerevan. And as I said, there was always this intention that urban history of Gyumri, especially pre-Soviet one, is more valuable. But as you know, the devastating earthquake of Spitak happened, and Gyumri, quite close to Spitak, suffered a lot. So there's no exact number of deaths of the Spitak earthquake, but there's this number from 25 to 35,000 people died only from one single earthquake. Comparing that with the last more stronger earthquake that happened in Turkey and Syria, there it was about 1/3 of about 10,000 deaths were registered in Turkey and Syria during this devastating earthquake that happened in 2023. But what happened in Gyumri, very quickly, there was this need for house people, and as majority of the social housing building were collapsed, built in 60s and 70s, so there was so many temporary housing installed in central parts of Gyumri, especially in the parks, and that was the time when they started doing new developments in the suburbs of Gyumri, where they had kind of more free spaces to do new development. this topic was very interesting. And then in 2016, when I was asked to curate Armenian Pavilion at the Venice Architecture Biennale, I thought that we need to kind of critically reconsider the mistakes that we had in post-earthquake Gyumri. So this is one of the land use maps that we have in Gyumri. And so this is the historic part of Gyumri. And then you can see all these parts were put under the development. So this is also the master plan, approved master plan. So this is the actual Gyumri. And then there were completely new developments happened in suburban areas of the Gyumri. And so we thought that, okay, so when you go to Gyumri, you'll see there is this big gap between new post-earthquake developments and the historic part of the Gyumri. And then we were really curious to understand how people perceive this area. So one of the ideas that we had at that time with the TUMO is after school educational program that works in different parts of Armenia. So we asked kids who were studying in TUMO and living in that district, trying to photograph the district and tell their stories, how they perceive the districts that were built after the earthquake. So these are some photos that you see, and all these pictures were presented also. Like this one, this also, but this is not from student picture, but how these developments that with the Soviet money or later with the independent Armenia's budgets, we did these developments to improve this situation, but situation continues to be really bad. So on the right side, you see the building that people agreed to go and live. On the left side, you can see a building that no one was ready to go and live there. You can see that how they say, photogenic kind of pictures that maybe they do bad and nice, but in fact, it's like really a district that socially vulnerable people continue to live there, but those people who could afford, they left these districts and went to the central. And then this was one of the pages that we showed at the Biennale's catalog. There's one copy I brought for the Armenian Institute. And so on the left side, you see a development of in one of these suburb areas that was built in the 90s. On the right side, you see new developments that was initiated by the former president of Armenia 2014. And because of this page, our catalog was banned, and Ministry of Culture, who financed the pavilion, also the publication, the minister said, no, you cannot give to this catalog to anyone, because it's kind of looking critically also, not only the mistakes that we did in the 90s, also the mistake that we were doing more or less at the same period of time. So ironically, a few years after that, I was asked to design continuation of that district, and I assumed that I tried to not repeat the same mistakes. So in case of Gyumri, the situation is in a way that last year, it started from 2017. There were so many projects, quite a lot of attention to Gyumri, and then Gyumri is now kind of reviving, being the second kind of largest town in Armenia. But still, there's a huge gap between historic district and the new developments that are kind of housing the majority of the population of Gyumri. Okay. So the other example that I want to share with you is Goris. I had a chance to collaborate with Armenian curator Nari Khachaturian last year, and I'm happy that her family is also here. We did a research in Khanzoresk, which is neighboring village of Goris. So Goris is kind of unique and a good kind of example of understanding south of Armenia. And so Goris, in that part of Armenia, as an example of Ani, people used to live in the caves, and majority of the developments happened kind of attaching the new housing developments next to the caves, because people used to live in semi kind of underground situations in that area. But when Armenia became part of the Russian Empire, there was decision to have kind of military base in Goris, and then during that period, people smoothly left the semi-underground housing and started living in the more kind of structured city. Now you see some examples from Gois and Khonzoresk, which is like next door village, where people kind of lived in cages and then they had the house in front of them. But then in early 19th century, there was kind of this structured urban pattern put in that area. And there's always this myth that this city was designed by German engineers, which is, there was a Russian military engineer who had a German blood in the family. So everybody is proud that Germans designed this city. But in fact, this was one of the examples how people for the modernization left their kind of like traditional housing, and they started living in this kind of more kind of structured urban fabric. But what is interesting that although people left there, they kind of brought the building culture of their previous kind of villages to the Goris. I had a privilege to walk in Goris with Philip a few years ago, and then we felt when you walk in Goris, you see that how this traditional housing building culture left this kind of like how they say caves, not clear, not structured kind of village pattern, and now it's like in really structured urban fabric tries to keep its own kind of like touch. And the interesting part is that even now people in Goris, when they build new houses, they are kind of trying to continue the same way, the same building culture. This is something that is really unique in Armenia. And Gorisians are the only one, I think, in Armenia that kind of trying to keep the building culture that I had in place. This is just a picture of the Goris church from the previous war in 90s war. The clashes happened a bit in Goris, center part of Goris, and there's this kind of mark from that period of time. Some examples from Goris that you see. And in Goris, one of the good examples also that I really enjoy, and also like I tried, and I hope we are quite soon to list this as a national monument. In late 60s, new developments designed by Sarhat Petrosyan. Also, he tried to kind of reinvent the local unique architecture, and by building this kind of like stacked kind of housing typology, he kind of tried to build kind of find new way to extrapolate the Goris architecture. And this is another sad picture. I was in Goris with another colleague that when the exodus of Artsakh people happened, and this cars full of the people just living Artsakh. And the last but not least, but on the map is wrong place. Metsamor is not there. Metsamor is here. Sorry for that. So this is why I was asked actually to talk. Yeah. So in 2007, when the only 7 months in my lab that I was working in an architecture office, I had a chance to work on the master plan of Metsamor. And when I visited Metsamor, I found the town quite interesting because we have so many these socialistic or Soviet kind of cities all over the Eastern Europe and other parts, but in Armenia, the unique case is that there are very few of them that they were built from scratch. Like there wasn't any settlement when they decided to build the town, and Metsamor is one of them. So in case of Metsamor, the uniqueness of Metsamor is that entire town, from the master plan to the last elements, playgrounds, are designed by one single architect or through involvement of the one single architect. So he's involved in all the design project. So this is the original master plan of the town, that's, as you can see here. So that's the original idea was to have three residential neighborhoods, and the middle, the idea was to have this civic center, city center that is happening. But when I visited, oh my God, I did wrong arrangement. So when I visited, the town is built only this district, part of this, and this part. So he didn't manage, or they didn't manage to realize the entire project. But these marvelous pictures that you can see, this kind of semi-abandoned town, also with Jenny, I think we went there, kind of shows the current situation of the town. So the town was designed for 35,000 people for the nuclear power plant, Metsamor nuclear power plant of Armenia. In its best time, it had about 20,000 population, so it never reached 35,000. Currently, it has around 10,000 population. And this huge kind of utopistic idea to build the town from scratch for nuclear power plants was kind of topic that we got interested in. And with my colleague Katarina Roters from Hungary, Germany, we initiated to do these issues and then published this book by a Swiss publisher. And this is the person who designed the entire town, quite unique personality. I didn't have a chance to meet him, but yeah, but he was the person who was behind the entire project. And he's not only the designer of Metsamor. He was, as I said, he was a unique character, and he designed and built the first genocide memorial during the Soviet period of Armenia, even before the one that we have in Yerevan. So this is in Kharbet, North Kharbet genocide memorial, quite unique kind of architecture project that was already there on the 50th commemoration of the Armenian genocide. Some old pictures of Metsamor from the family archive. So the interesting part of the town is that entire town was, how they say, carved by using 3 different residential buildings. So one typology was 9-story buildings, and 2 5-story kind of buildings formed entire city and occupied entire socialistic blocks of the town. You see this snake-shaped building. They are kind of the same building, kind of repeating or changing the stone color, etc., and other elements. So as I said, so this was the entire. You remember, it was all this area was that for plan. They managed to only build this one. This is the city center, few buildings here. But what was interesting, so as the utopistic idea of architect wasn't realized because of the collapse of the Soviet Union, so city center wasn't the physical center of the city. So when we visited first time and then during the later visits, people formed kind of revised the original idea of the town, and they formed kind of new city center in the physical center. So this was quite interesting examples that whatever architects are thinking, people are kind of doing whatever they want to do. And then, so here now, people form kind of new city center, the bank branches, mobile companies, small markets, like even community park is all located in the central part of physical center. There's another interesting layer of it that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the nuclear power plant wasn't in operation, so all these people were jobless, and they started occupying themselves in agriculture. So that was the time when the same architect revised his original idea and said, okay, so we don't have socialism, we don't need socialistic districts. And then he made a new proposal for the upper district, the 3rd micro district, trying to have kind of like detached kind of houses with their own land that people can cultivate or keep themselves busy in agriculture. Some nice pictures of Katarina. This is the hospital. These are designed by the same architect. Sport complex that is kind of like the jewel of the city that we have we take everyone. Dance floor of the House of Culture. And this is like one of those elements that he, as I said, he also did the landscaping design. So from the master plan, he went to the designing small kind of fountains and pools in the courtyards. And this is really funny story. So when we started digitizing entire available archive of the nuclear power plant or Metsamor, they said, no, it's a secret project. We cannot digitize it. digitize that. We said why? Because they said it's linked to the nuclear power plants. And so the original name of the town wasn't Metsamor. It was like workers or company town for nuclear power plant of the Soviet Armenia. So we said, okay, we'll cover everything that is related to the nuclear power plant. All these yellow post-its that you see, we cover the nuclear power plant part, and then the rest, they were okay. So we scanned everything, just covering that, but we managed to digitize the entire archive that was available. House of Culture, again, designed by the same architect. And one of the nicest part of the plan was that in the highest point of the town, there was idea to build a monument for the nuclear energy. So that was kind of symbol of industrial revolution or nuclear revolution after Soviet Armenia. But after collapse of the Soviet Union, it wasn't built, and there was a church instead of that. So there was a shift between kind of Soviet ideology and non-Soviet or independent Armenians ideology. Some other examples here. And this is the plan of that district that he said, okay, forget socialistic bloc, let's just split it into small portions and then give opportunity to the people to occupy themselves with agriculture. And this is the famous picture that it's on the cover. And also it was event invitation, the logo of the basketball team of the nuclear power plant with the Mount Ararat nuclear power plant, and there is a peaceful atom sign of the Soviet Union. We tried to put this building, which is in the sport complex of Metsamor, in the list of the protected buildings. We were unsuccessful, and then recently they renovated this because now Armenian government spends a lot of money in the different regions of Armenia, so they're kind of spending a lot of money, and they also spend this money, and now this logo is gone and it's painted just red without Mount Ararat, without nuclear power plant and everything. So we lost it. This is only in our book cover. I think that's it. It was a bit fast, but I think it was kind of like kind of holistic picture. So any question, comments? Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention everybody here, there is some wine, of course. Please also, as a trustee, I have to say this, please do go onto our website and donate if you can. It's a very small organization, but I think it does some really important work. So that would always be much appreciated. There's one more event in December on the 12th, I believe, which is about, I think it's Voices of Armenia. So some really interesting insights into opera in a discussion. So please take a look at the events list. We'll also have some further talks about urbanism architecture coming up in January. So please keep an eye out on our events page. Yeah, thank you very much. Oh, and you can always sign up to our newsletter as well. Thank you. And thanks again, Sarhat. Thank you.